Kiernan Drell leaned back in his chair, the synthetic leather creaking under his weight as he stared at the screen. The words of the job offer flickered in front of him, accompanied by the glowing Andurian Consortium logo, a coiled silver serpent against a black field. It was simple on the surface: provide security for a trade delegation on a remote outpost. The pay was more than fair, and the location seemed quiet enough. No insurgent zones, no border skirmishes, no pirate raids. Just a standard protection gig. Exactly the kind of low-stakes job Kiernan had been looking for. He'd just begun mentally calculating how many weeks of downtime this paycheck could buy him when the door behind him hissed open. Kiernan didn't have to turn around to know it was his longtime partner, Lucas Ferran. They'd worked together on half a dozen contracts over the years, Lucas always taking the role of the level-headed planner while Kiernan was the guy who kicked in the doors. Another exciting bounty on that screen? Lucas asked, stepping into the cramped quarters of their shared dropship. His voice had the usual sardonic edge, but Kiernan heard the genuine curiosity underneath. Not a bounty. A security contract, Kiernan replied. He gestured to the screen. And get this, no combat expected. Just escort duty. I don't even think they're expecting any trouble. Lucas scoffed as he leaned against the bulkhead. No such thing as a job with no trouble. But if the credits are good, I'm in. They're more than good, Kiernan said. I could actually take a break after this one. Maybe even find a planet with a beach. A beach, huh? Lucas chuckled. I don't even remember the last time we saw a beach. That's because you spend all your free time holed up with a deck of cards, Kiernan retorted. But hey, if we pull this off without a hitch, first round's on me. Lucas raised an eyebrow. First round's always on you. You still owe me from that job on Linares Station. I thought we agreed that wasn't my fault, Kiernan shot back, smirking. Their banter was interrupted by another ping on Kiernan's terminal. He tapped a key and a new message popped up. It was from the Andurian Consortium representative. The name, Envoy Beltran, flashed at the top of the screen, followed by a short, formal note. Your application has been approved. Please report to Outpost Athena within the next standard cycle. Further details will be provided upon arrival. Well, that settles it, Kiernan said, shutting down the screen. He turned to Lucas. Pack your gear. We're heading to Athena. Lucas crossed his arms. You sure about this? Something about it seems a little too easy. It's just a trade delegation, Kiernan said. Rich diplomats, fancy cargo, and a bunch of handshakes. What's the worst that could happen? Lucas sighed. You're going to regret saying that, you know? Kiernan shrugged. Probably. But until that happens, let's get moving. The sooner we start, the sooner we're done. They both left the dropship's cramped living quarters and headed to the armory. Kiernan grabbed his standard loadout. A reliable pulse rifle, a compact sidearm, and a lightweight combat suit that had seen better days. Lucas, ever the meticulous one, double-checked his own gear, an array of surveillance tools, a high-grade tactical helmet, and a set of multispectrum goggles that could spot a cloaked target from a mile away. You know, Lucas said as he secured his equipment, I always thought we'd end up doing something a bit more noble, like fighting for a cause or joining one of those freedom battalions. Kiernan laughed. You're the only merc I know who talks about freedom battalions. We're not heroes, Lucas. We're contractors. We do the job, we get paid, and we move on. Yeah, Lucas muttered. Doesn't mean I can't dream. They boarded their shuttle and set course for Outpost Athena. The journey was uneventful. Just the hum of the engines and the occasional flicker of stars through the viewport. Kiernan let his thoughts wander as he sat in the co-pilot's seat. Lucas, in his usual fashion, was buried in the outpost schematics, trying to identify potential security weak points before they even landed. You really think it'll be that simple? Lucas asked, not looking up from his tablet. It's just a bunch of rich guys and their cargo, Kiernan replied. We show up, we stand around looking intimidating, and we leave. Easy credits. And if it's not? Lucas said. Then we improvise, Kiernan said. We always do. The shuttle's autopilot beeped, indicating they were approaching Athena. The station came into view. A sprawling latticework of metal and light, suspended in the void. It wasn't much to look at, but it was better than most places they'd worked. At least the docking bay didn't have any visible scorch marks. Kiernan stood and stretched. All right, let's see what the consortium has in store for us. Lucas nodded, his expression cautious but resigned. Let's hope it's not another Lunaris. Kiernan grinned. If it is, I'll buy you 2 rounds this time. As the shuttle docked and the airlock hissed open, Kiernan and Lucas stepped out into the station's bustling corridors. They hadn't been there more than a minute before a sleek, silver-haired Reloran woman approached them. She wore a flowing, jewel-encrusted robe and carried herself with an air of authority. "You must be Drell and Ferran," she said, her tone crisp and professional. "Envoy Beltran sends his regards. I'm Aelith. I'll be your liaison while you're here." Kiernan exchanged a glance with Lucas before offering a nod. "Looking forward to working with you, Aelith." "Good," she said. "Follow me. I'll brief you on your responsibilities." Kiernan and Lucas fell into step behind her, their boots echoing against the metal floor. As they made their way through the station's maze of corridors, Kiernan couldn't help but notice how many different species they passed: humans, Relorans, Andurians, and a few he couldn't even name. It was a reminder that this was no backwater job. This was the kind of assignment that could open doors if they played their cards right. Lucas gave him a sidelong glance. "Still think it's going to be simple?" Kiernan smirked. "Let's find out." Chapter 2, First Contact. The smell of ozone hung heavy in the air as Kiernan and Lucas stepped into the meeting hall. Despite its designation as a hall, the space was little more than a repurposed storage bay, walls lined with empty cargo crates and stray toolkits. The delegation sat around a long table, the room's overhead lighting flickering periodically. On one side of the table sat several Andurian officials, all dressed in their uniform silver robes. Their ornate headpieces made them appear taller and more imposing than they really were. On the other side was Aelith, her green eyes scanning the documents on her holopad with sharp focus. To her left stood an unfamiliar figure, a human man in his late 30s, his rugged face marked by a faint scar across his cheek. He carried himself with the confident ease of someone used to navigating tricky situations. "Who's the new guy?" Kiernan muttered under his breath as he and Lucas approached the table. "No idea," Lucas replied, his tone quiet but curious. "But he looks like he's been around the block a few times." Aelith glanced up from her holopad and gestured for them to join. "Drell, Ferran, this is Gareth Tyven. He's been assigned as an independent mediator for the talks. He'll be assisting in ensuring both parties communicate clearly." Kiernan raised an eyebrow. "A mediator? Didn't know we were having issues communicating." Gareth smiled faintly, his voice calm and measured. "It's not about existing issues. It's about preventing misunderstandings before they happen. I've worked on half a dozen Andurian trade negotiations, and I've learned that clarity can save everyone a lot of time and trouble." Lucas nodded in greeting. "Lucas Ferran. This is Kiernan Drell. We're your hired help." "Pleasure to meet you both," Gareth said, extending a hand. Kiernan shook it briefly, noting the firm grip and steady gaze. This guy didn't seem like someone who scared easily. Aelith motioned for everyone to sit. "Now that we're all acquainted, let's get started. The Andurian delegation has brought forward some concerns about the logistics of the trade routes. They're requesting additional security measures." One of the Andurian officials, a tall woman with deep blue skin and piercing silver eyes, spoke up. "Our cargo vessels have experienced delays and unexplained deviations from their scheduled paths. We suspect there may be unauthorized interference." "Pirates?" Lucas asked. "It's a possibility," the Andurian woman replied. "But we have no confirmed sightings. That's why we need heightened security. Preventative measures." Gareth leaned forward, his tone patient. "While I understand the concern, it's important to establish what kind of interference we're dealing with. Has there been any communication from the vessels reporting these deviations? Any distress signals?" Another Andurian delegate shook his head. "No distress signals. Just unusual route changes. We suspect jamming or cloaking technology." Kiernan exchanged a glance with Lucas. "If it's cloaking tech, we'll need specialized equipment to detect it. Can't fight what you can't see." Aelith tapped her holopad, displaying a holographic map of the sector. "These are the routes in question. The deviations occur in this area, an asteroid cluster about 2 light-years from the outpost. We believe it's the most vulnerable point." Lucas frowned. "An asteroid cluster? That's a perfect place to stage an ambush." "Exactly," Aelith said. "Which is why we're assigning you 2 to investigate. You'll join a scout vessel, survey the cluster, and report back any irregularities. We'll provide the equipment you need." Gareth nodded. "It's a sound plan. Early detection and swift action can prevent larger issues." I'll coordinate with Aelith and ensure the delegation is kept informed. Kiernan crossed his arms. All right, when do we start? Aelith smiled faintly. As soon as you're ready. The vessel is prepped and waiting in docking bay 4. Make sure you're equipped before you leave. And be careful. This could be nothing, or it could be the start of something more serious. As the meeting concluded, Kiernan and Lucas stepped out into the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. Lucas glanced at his partner. Cloaking tech, asteroid clusters, unexplained deviations. Starting to feel like this might not be the cakewalk we thought it would be. Could be, Kiernan said. But it's our job to find out. Lucas smirked. Still think it'll be simple? Kiernan chuckled, though it was humorless. Let's just hope it's nothing more than a few rocks and bad navigation. Otherwise, this might be the longest contract of our lives. Chapter 3, Deep in the Asteroid Cluster. Kiernan adjusted the strap of his chest rig and glanced around the cramped cabin of the scout vessel. The lights flickered once, then steadied as Lucas stepped in, carrying a portable sensor array in both hands. The boxy equipment hummed faintly, its edges glowing with blue status indicators. You sure this thing's calibrated? Kiernan asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. He leaned against the bulkhead, his arms crossed. Lucas set the array down on the bench and nodded. Double-checked it myself. If there's anything hiding out there, cloaked ships, weird anomalies, this'll pick it up. And if it doesn't? Then we're flying blind, Lucas said, a faint grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Not like that's new for us. Great, Kiernan muttered. He looked through the forward viewport where the asteroid cluster loomed ahead. Jagged rocks tumbled and spun in the void, their surfaces pockmarked with craters. The faint glimmer of metallic veins ran through some of the larger asteroids, catching the pale light of the nearby star. Aelith's voice came over the comm, Scout Vessel Theta, you're entering the target sector. Proceed with caution and begin your scans. Kiernan tapped the comms console. Acknowledged. Starting scans now. Lucas flipped a few switches on the sensor array and the device began to emit a low, rhythmic pulse. A holographic display flickered to life, projecting a three-dimensional map of the surrounding space. Asteroids appeared as glowing green shapes, each marked with a faint outline. I don't see anything unusual yet, Lucas said, his gaze fixed on the display. Give it a minute, Kiernan replied. If something's out there, it'll show up sooner or later. As the vessel drifted deeper into the cluster, the view outside the viewport became increasingly cluttered. Asteroids passed dangerously close, forcing Kiernan to nudge the controls every so often. The engines whined as he adjusted their course, keeping them just clear of the spinning rocks. Watch it, Lucas said, gripping the console as a particularly large asteroid came into view. I see it, Kiernan said, shifting the thrusters slightly. Just keep an eye on the scans. The pulse of the sensor array continued and the holographic display updated in real time. Most of the objects remained static, asteroids drifting in slow, predictable patterns. But then a faint red blip appeared on the edge of the display. Hold on, Lucas said, frowning. There's something here. It's faint, but yeah, there it is again. Kiernan leaned closer to the display. What is it? Lucas adjusted a dial on the array. Could be a cloaked ship. It's not moving like an asteroid too steady. No rotation. Where? 6 degrees starboard, 20 degrees down. About 10 clicks out. Kiernan adjusted the controls, guiding the vessel in the direction Lucas indicated. The engines hummed as they altered course, threading their way through the maze of rocks. Aelith's voice came through again. Theta, we're picking up some faint readings on our end as well. Proceed carefully. If it's a cloaked ship, we don't know who it belongs to. Got it, Kiernan replied. Closing in now. As they approached, the red blip on the display grew brighter. Lucas tapped a few more controls, refining the scan. It's definitely artificial. No question about it. What kind of ship? Kiernan asked. Can't tell, Lucas said. Too faint to get a full profile. But it's big. Bigger than any of the transport ships we've seen. Could be Endurian, Kiernan muttered. Or maybe something else entirely. Lucas glanced at him. You thinking what I'm thinking? If it's not Endurian, then somebody else might be poking around these trade routes, Kiernan said. And that's bad news for the consortium. Exactly, Lucas said. But without a solid ID, we can't report much. We'll get closer, Kiernan said, his hands steady on the controls. If it's cloaked, we need to know why it's here. The vessel drifted closer, the faint signal now steady on the display. The asteroid field thinned slightly, giving them a clear path toward the unknown object. As they neared, a shape began to take form, just a faint outline, but enough to suggest a large, angular hull. Kiernan's grip on the controls tightened. There it is. That's no asteroid. Lucas stared at the display, then at the viewport. It's huge. That's gotta be a warship. Or a cargo vessel with a lot of tech, Kiernan said. But if it's cloaked, it means they don't want anyone seeing it. Aelith's voice crackled over the comm again. Theta, what's your status? Have you identified the vessel? Not yet, Kiernan said. But it's big. Definitely not consortium. We're moving in closer. Lucas glanced at him. You sure that's a good idea? We need to know who's out here, Kiernan said. Otherwise, this whole trade route is at risk. As the vessel closed the gap, the faint outline became more defined. Kiernan and Lucas exchanged a tense look, both of them silently acknowledging what they might be about to uncover. Chapter 4, Bound by Trust. The faint glow of the ship's cloaking field shimmered like a ripple on water, barely perceptible against the backdrop of distant stars. Kiernan adjusted the throttle, keeping their scout vessel steady as they closed the final distance. Every second felt stretched, the tension in the cabin thick enough to cut. Lucas leaned over the sensor array, eyes locked on the holo display. Definitely a ship. About 100 meters long, maybe more. Shape's not standard consortium or Endurian. Not pirate either, Kiernan said. No makeshift plating, no patchwork engines. This thing was built for stealth. The radio crackled, Aelith's voice sharp and direct. Theta, you're entering visual range. What do you see? Kiernan toggled the comm, a ship cloaked. Too refined for pirates. Not Endurian. We're going to get closer. Negative, Theta, Aelith replied. Do not engage. Get visuals, get scans, and return. Lucas snorted. Sure, we'll just stroll on back without a clue who's in our backyard. Relax, Kiernan said. We'll follow protocol. Get what we need, and then we're out. The scanner chirped softly as Lucas fine-tuned it again. I'm picking up faint energy spikes. Might be active systems on standby. Could mean a cruise aboard. Kiernan frowned. Why would they just sit out here, cloaked? No patrols, no movement. Something's not adding up. Maybe they're waiting for something, Lucas suggested. Or someone. Maybe, Kiernan muttered, narrowing his eyes at the faint outline of the hull. But waiting for what? Aelith's voice came through again, firmer this time. Theta, report. What's the status? We've got scans coming in now, Kiernan said. No visible insignia, no known design profile. Doesn't match any records. Copy that, Aelith said. If it's unidentified, we'll need you to mark the location and withdraw. Lucas turned to Kiernan. We can't just walk away. Not yet. I know, Kiernan said, his voice low. Aelith's right, but if we leave now, we'll never find out what this ship is doing here. Lucas hesitated, then nodded. I'll try to run a deeper scan. See if we can get a look inside without tripping any alarms. The cabin fell silent except for the faint hum of the engines and the soft blips of the sensor array. Lucas's fingers danced over the controls, adjusting frequencies and aligning the sensor grid. The display updated slowly, the ship's outline becoming more detailed. Kiernan's jaw tightened as he stared at the increasingly clear image. There's something weird about the hull, Lucas said after a moment. It's too smooth. Like it's not metal at all. Could be some kind of advanced alloy, Kiernan said. But it doesn't match anything I've seen before. Me neither, Lucas admitted. And I've seen a lot. The radio crackled again. Theta, status report, Aelith's voice demanded. We're still scanning, Kiernan replied. No sign of movement. No life signs so far. Mark the coordinates and withdraw, Aelith ordered. We need to analyze this data before making any moves. Kiernan exchanged a look with Lucas. What do you think? Lucas sighed. She's not wrong. We can't stay here forever. Let's get the scans, then bug out. Fine, Kiernan said. But I want as much data as we can get before we go. Lucas nodded and kept working. The scanner continued its slow, steady sweep, capturing as much detail as possible. Kiernan leaned back in his seat, tension coursing through him as he watched the ghostly image of the ship hover on the display. There was something. And out here for a while, it's been real good at staying hidden. And if it's new? Lucas gave him a grim look. Then someone's got tech we've never seen before, and they're not sharing it. A soft tone from the scanner broke the moment. Lucas looked down and frowned. That can't be right. What is it? Kiernan asked. The power spikes, there's a pattern, Lucas said. Almost like a signal. Kiernan leaned forward. You mean it's broadcasting? Not exactly, Lucas said. More like a short-range pulse. Could be a beacon or a heartbeat. Kiernan's gut tightened. A heartbeat? You mean? I mean, something's running in there, Lucas said. We need to figure out what before we head back. Before Kiernan could respond, the radio crackled again. Theta, withdraw now. That's an order. Kiernan tapped the comm, understood. We'll finish the scan and return immediately. Lucas cast him a sidelong glance. You really think we're just gonna walk away from this? We don't have a choice, Kiernan said. But we'll be back. This isn't over. Chapter 5, The Quiet Moment. Kiernan sat on the edge of a cargo crate, the dim lights of the outpost casting long shadows across the room. His rifle leaned against the wall next to him, and his fingers idly tapped his knee as he stared at the opposite bulkhead. Lucas walked in, holding 2 steaming mugs of synth coffee, and handed one to him. You look like you haven't slept in days, Lucas said, sitting down on another crate. What's eating you? Kiernan took the mug, his hands warming against the ceramic surface. Just can't shake what we saw out there. That ship, it doesn't make sense. No crew, no markings, just sitting there in the middle of nowhere. Lucas took a long sip, then smirked. Sounds like every job we've ever taken. Nothing ever makes sense until it's too late. True, Kiernan admitted. But this one feels different. Like we're poking something that doesn't want to be found. Well, poking things is kind of our job, Lucas said. But I get it. This is next level weird. They sat in silence for a while, the soft hum of the outpost's ventilation system the only sound. Finally, Lucas set his mug down and stretched. You know what we need? He asked. What? Kiernan muttered, not looking up. A break. Just a little downtime before we dive back into this mess. Recharge, reset, clear our heads. Kiernan chuckled dryly. Downtime? On this station? Where would we even go? Lucas grinned. Come on, there's gotta be a cantina around here. We can find a couple of seats in the corner, have a drink or two, and talk about something that doesn't involve mysterious alien ships. Kiernan glanced at him. You serious? As serious as I get, Lucas said. Come on, you're always saying we need to unwind more. Why not now? Kiernan thought about it for a moment, then shrugged. Sure, why not? Lucas stood and clapped him on the shoulder. That's the spirit. Let's go find that cantina. The two of them left the cargo bay, walking down the station's dimly lit corridors. Most of the crew were either working or asleep, and the halls were quiet, save for the occasional clanking of machinery. After a short search, they found a small, out-of-the-way cantina. It was more of a glorified mess hall than a proper bar, but it served drinks, and that was good enough. They took a seat at a corner table, ordered a couple of stiff shots, and settled in. Lucas leaned back, his arms crossed. So, let's talk about something that isn't work, he said. Like what? Kiernan asked, raising an eyebrow. I don't know. Hobbies? You got any hobbies, Drell? Kiernan shook his head. You know I don't. I've been doing this Merc thing so long, I don't even remember what I used to like. Come on, there's gotta be something. Music? Cooking? Collecting something weird? Kiernan thought for a moment, then sighed. I used to play cards. Poker, blackjack, that kind of stuff. But that was years ago. Cards, huh? Lucas said. You never told me that. Why'd you stop? Stop being fun when every game felt like a hustle, Kiernan said. It's hard to enjoy it when you're always worried about getting cheated. Lucas chuckled. Fair point. But maybe you should pick it up again. Find a friendly game somewhere, just for fun. Might help you relax. Maybe, Kiernan said, though he didn't sound convinced. They fell into a more comfortable rhythm of conversation, talking about old jobs, people they'd worked with, and the kind of planets they'd seen. The drinks helped, taking the edge off their tension. For the first time in what felt like weeks, Kiernan felt his shoulders relax. As they sat there, Lucas glanced around the cantina. Not a bad little spot, he said. Quiet. Decent drinks. I could get used to this. Don't get too comfortable, Kiernan said, smirking. You know we won't be here long. Lucas laughed. Yeah, I know. But it's nice to pretend, even if just for a while. Kiernan took another sip, letting the warmth of the drink spread through him. Yeah, it is. For the rest of the night, they stayed in that corner, talking and laughing. It wasn't much, but it was enough to remind them both that there was more to life than missions and mysteries. And though neither of them said it out loud, they both knew that moments like this were why they kept going. Moments where they could just be themselves, free from the weight of the unknown. Moments that made it all worth it. Chapter 6, The Hard Choice. Kiernan and Lucas sat side by side in the outpost's cramped command room, the faint hum of power conduits filling the silence between them. The holographic display in front of them showed the sector map with a blinking marker where the mysterious ship had been discovered. Kiernan ran a hand through his hair, staring at the map like it might give him answers if he stared long enough. "We can't just leave it out there," Lucas said, his tone firm but measured. "You know that, right?" Kiernan sighed. "What do you suggest we do? We can't take it on ourselves. And Aelith's made it pretty clear she doesn't want us getting any closer." Lucas folded his arms, leaning back in the chair. "Maybe not on paper. But she's not the one sitting here trying to figure out what's out there. We are. That thing's in our sector. It's our responsibility." "I don't think Aelith would see it that way," Kiernan said dryly. "She's not the one who saw it," Lucas countered. "We did. And we're the ones who will have to deal with whatever happens next." Before Kiernan could respond, Aelith walked into the room. Her usual calm demeanor seemed more brittle than usual, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Theta, you've done your part. You got us the scans, the coordinates. That's all we need. Leave the rest to the higher-ups." Lucas stood, his posture tense. "With all due respect, we're the ones out there. We saw that ship. We saw what it's capable of, or at least what it might be capable of. You expect us to just step back and hope for the best?" "Yes," Aelith said without hesitation. "Because that's your job. You follow orders. You don't make decisions outside your assignment." Kiernan rose to his feet, his voice low but steady. "And what if those orders are wrong? What if stepping back means letting something dangerous slip through the cracks?" Aelith's emerald gaze locked onto Kiernan's. "And what if rushing in without a plan puts everyone on this station at risk?" "I don't think you understand what you're asking." Lucas stepped closer, his tone challenging. "And I don't think you understand what you're asking us to ignore. This isn't just some stray cargo ship. This is something we don't have a playbook for. And if we wait too long, we might lose any chance we have to figure out what it's doing here." The tension in the room thickened, the three of them standing in a silent standoff. Finally, Aelith took a slow breath and exhaled. "I'll take your concerns to my superiors. But that's all I can do. This is bigger than us, and we can't risk acting on impulse." With that, she turned and left, leaving Kiernan and Lucas alone again. Kiernan sat back down heavily, rubbing his temples. This is starting to feel like a losing battle. Lucas leaned on the console, his face set in determination. "Not if we stick with it. If they won't do something, maybe we have to." "Go rogue?" Kiernan asked, raising an eyebrow. "You know how that usually ends." "I'm not saying we throw protocol out the airlock," Lucas replied. "But we can't just ignore what we've seen. There's a way to do this that doesn't involve going completely off the grid. We just have to find it." Kiernan stared at him for a long moment before nodding slowly. "All right, let's see what we can figure out. But we do this carefully. If we step out of line, we'll be lucky if all we lose is our contracts." Lucas grinned faintly. "That's the spirit. We'll find a way." Over the next few hours, they pored over every scan, every piece of data they had on the ship. They debated tactics, argued over possibilities, and reviewed every protocol they could think of. By the time they finished, they still didn't have all the answers, but they had a plan, a way to keep an eye on the ship without triggering alarms, a way to gather more information without risking everything. Kiernan leaned back, feeling the weight on his shoulders lighten just a fraction. "All right. We've got to start. Now let's see if we can get some real answers." Chapter 7, Standing Together. The hum of the outpost's central control room filled the air as Kiernan leaned over a console, his hands steady on the keys. Beside him, Lucas scanned the feed from their surveillance drone. The drone's live footage flickered on the screen, grainy but clear enough to make out the faint shape of the cloaked ship lingering in the asteroid field. "Still no movement," Lucas said, his voice low and focused. "It's just sitting there." "That's what worries me," Kiernan replied. "No crew, no obvious purpose. It's like it's waiting for something." Lucas glanced over at him. "What if it's automated? Like a drone or a probe? Could explain the lack of life signs." Kiernan frowned. "Then why cloak it? If it's just a probe, it wouldn't need to hide." Lucas didn't respond immediately. Instead, he shifted the drone's view, panning across the ship's hull. The faint shimmer of its cloaking field rippled as the drone's sensors brushed against it. Kiernan watched the screen intently, his jaw tight. After a long pause, Lucas spoke again. "You think it's waiting for a signal? Maybe from a larger fleet." "Could be," Kiernan admitted. "But if that's the case, we need to know who's sending that signal and when." Before they could discuss further, the comm panel lit up and Aelith's voice came through. "Theta, we've reviewed your latest data. Still no conclusive identification, but the energy readings suggest advanced tech well beyond anything we've seen in this sector." "Understood," Kiernan said. "What's the next move?" Aelith's tone turned cautious. The consortium wants to err on the side of caution. We'll maintain surveillance but won't engage unless provoked. Your drone will remain on station and you'll continue monitoring from here. Lucas leaned closer to the comm panel. And if they send more ships? What then? Aelith hesitated. Then we reassess. For now, we watch and wait. When the comm line went silent, Kiernan turned to Lucas. Well, that's not much of a plan. Sure isn't, Lucas said. But it's what we've got. Let's focus on the drone feed and see if we can spot anything unusual. Hours passed as they continued their vigil, reviewing every flicker and pulse from the cloaked ship. They took turns monitoring the console, grabbing brief moments of rest when they could. Each time one of them closed their eyes, the other stayed alert, scanning the data, looking for a sign, any sign that might explain what was happening. During one of Kiernan's breaks, Lucas tapped on the console's side panel. You know, if we had the right gear, we might be able to crack that cloaking field. Get a real look at what's underneath. Kiernan rubbed the back of his neck. And if we get caught tampering, it'll be more than just the job we lose. Lucas smirked. Since when did you play it safe? Since I realized living to see another contract might not be such a bad thing, Kiernan said. Despite the tension, a small chuckle escaped Lucas. Fair enough. But you've got to admit it's tempting. If we could just... The drone feed suddenly flashed. A burst of static rippled across the screen before stabilizing. Kiernan snapped upright, his hands flying to the controls. What was that? He asked. Lucas's fingers flew over the keys. Some kind of energy spike. Not from the ship from nearby. Kiernan squinted at the screen. A faint dot had appeared, moving slowly toward the cloaked vessel. It was small, maybe another drone or a single-seat craft. Where did that come from? Kiernan muttered. Lucas pulled up the trajectory data. Looks like it launched from an asteroid a few clicks out. Might be a hidden station or a relay point. Another one of theirs? Kiernan asked. Could be. Or it could be someone else trying to figure out what we're looking at, Lucas said. The smaller craft drifted closer to the cloaked ship, its movements cautious, almost hesitant. Kiernan and Lucas watched in silence as it circled the vessel, scanning. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it veered off and vanished into the asteroid field. Well, that was strange, Lucas said, breaking the silence. Kiernan nodded. If it's another faction, they might be watching us as closely as we're watching them. What now? Lucas asked. Kiernan leaned back, exhaling slowly. Now we report what we saw. If there are more players in this game, the consortium needs to know. Lucas grinned. Finally, something interesting. I was starting to get bored. Let's hope it stays interesting and doesn't turn into a disaster, Kiernan said. Lucas patted him on the shoulder. Disasters are where we shine, Drell. With that, they turned back to the console, ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 8, A Legend Among the Stars. The outpost's command center was a flurry of activity. Aelith paced behind the main console while Kiernan and Lucas stood shoulder to shoulder, their eyes fixed on the screen. The mysterious ship had shifted position. After days of near-total stillness, it was now on the move. It's heading toward the inner sector, Aelith said, her voice tight with urgency. If it reaches the core trade routes, it could disrupt everything. Kiernan ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched across his face. What's it waiting for? It's like it was dormant until now. Why move now? Could be a response to our scans? Lucas suggested, leaning on the console. Maybe we tripped something. Aelith stopped pacing and turned to them. It doesn't matter why. What matters is stopping it. If it breaches the core routes, it could spark panic. We can't afford that. Kiernan crossed his arms, weighing their options. What do we have on hand? Any defense systems we can deploy? Aelith shook her head. Not enough. This outpost isn't designed for large-scale conflict. The best we can do is track it and relay its position to the consortium. Lucas frowned. Relay its position so they can do what? By the time they get here, it'll be long gone. Kiernan nodded. We need to slow it down. By time for reinforcements. Aelith's expression darkened. You're not suggesting. We don't have a choice. Kiernan cut in. If we don't act, it's going to slip through. Lucas and I can take the scout vessel and try to intercept it. Maybe disable its engines. Force it to stay put. Lucas raised an eyebrow. That's a hell of a gamble, Drell. What if it's armed to the teeth? We're armed too, Kiernan said. Not as much, but enough to cause some trouble. Besides, it's been sitting out there for who knows how long without firing a shot. If we're careful, we might be able to jam its propulsion without getting into a full-blown fight. Aelith hesitated. You'd be going out there without any backup. If things go wrong, Things always go wrong, Lucas said, a faint grin on his lips. But we've handled worse. Right, Drell? Kiernan nodded, his expression serious. We'll be careful. Just keep an open channel. And if we need a quick exit, have the outpost sensors ready to guide us back. Aelith reluctantly agreed. Fine. But if this goes south, don't try to be heroes. Just get back here in one piece. Got it, Kiernan said. We'll leave in 5. Lucas clapped him on the shoulder as they headed toward the docking bay. Looks like we're back to kicking indoors. Just another day at work, Kiernan replied, though the tension in his voice was hard to miss. They boarded the scout vessel, running through the pre-launch checklist in practice silence. Kiernan took the pilot's seat while Lucas handled the sensors. As the engines came online, the small ship hummed with quiet power. Ready? Kiernan asked. Ready, Lucas confirmed. The vessel lifted off and glided out of the docking bay, heading toward the mysterious ship's last known coordinates. The asteroid field they had grown so familiar with now felt more ominous, the jagged rocks casting long shadows as they passed. There it is, Lucas said, pointing to the screen. The ship was unmistakable, a dark, angular shape partially shrouded by the flicker of its cloaking field. Okay, Kiernan said. We're not looking for a fight. We hit its engines, slow it down, and then get out. Understood, Lucas said. As they approached, Kiernan kept the ship steady, maneuvering carefully to avoid drawing attention. Lucas locked onto the target's propulsion system, a faint energy signature visible even through the cloaking field. Got it, Lucas said. Looks like their engines are running hot. A well-placed EMP might be enough to knock them offline. All right, Kiernan said. Fire when ready. Lucas launched the EMP. The device streaked through the darkness and detonated just shy of the enemy ship. Sparks flared across the vessel's outline and its engines sputtered. The ship shuddered, slowing its advance. We got it, Lucas said, a hint of surprise in his voice. Nice shot, Kiernan said, pulling the scout vessel away. Now let's get out of here before. A sudden energy spike cut him off. The ship's cloaking field flickered and dropped entirely, revealing its full form. It wasn't a single vessel, it was part of a larger structure, a massive modular frame with what looked like docking ports and storage bays. Holy, Lucas began, but Kiernan interrupted. Change of plans. We're going to need that backup. As they relayed the data back to the outpost, Kiernan and Lucas realized they hadn't just found a ship, they had uncovered something far more significant. They didn't know if it was a forward operating base, a mobile outpost, or a relic from another time, but one thing was certain, this discovery would change everything.